Thane Whitaker thought loyalty was a bond that held firm, a promise that would always be honored, until he opened an envelope and found his family had rewritten the terms. Every hour of overtime, every repair he'd made to the house on Cedar Lane, every dollar he'd poured into keeping it afloat had been his investment in a shared future. But some futures he was about to discover could be signed away in secret. It was a chilly Saturday morning in Boise, Idaho, when Thane maneuvered his battered pickup into the driveway of his parents' single-story ranch home. The cedar siding weathered to a soft gray, and the slanted roof told stories of time's passage, but also of his care. New shingles patched in tight rows, a porch he'd rebuilt board by board, a heating system he'd coaxed back to life. For 9 years, Thane had sunk over $65,000 into this house, not just to save it from foreclosure, but to shield his parents, Linda and Gerald, from the weight of their debts. Mortgage payments, burst pipes, runaway utility bills. He'd shouldered them all, a quiet vow to the family who'd shaped him. Inside, the house smelled of Linda's lavender candles and the faint, earthy scent of aged timber. She stood in the kitchen, her hands dusted with flour from shaping bread dough, her gray hair pulled into a loose knot. "Thane, can you sort through these for me?" she asked, gesturing to a pile of papers on the counter. "The electric bill's giving me trouble again, and you know those online systems confuse me." Thane kicked off his work boots and nodded. This was routine, being the family's fixer, from balancing their checkbook to unclogging drains. As a mechanical engineer, he was wired to untangle problems, but the ones here always carried a heavier toll, like a debt he paid without question. He sat at the worn oak table, flipping through dog-eared receipts and late notices, his rough hands moving with steady precision. Then he spotted it, a thick, cream-colored envelope half hidden under a grocery list, stamped with "Last Will and Estate Plan" in bold letters. His heart gave a sharp thud, not from nosiness but from instinct. His parents weren't organized. Important papers often ended up lost or misfiled. He glanced toward the kitchen where Linda's soft humming drifted through the air. He shouldn't look, but what if this was another oversight he needed to catch? He eased the envelope open, the paper smooth and heavy. The words hit like a punch. The house, worth $480,000. A savings account holding $250,000. Gerald's gleaming pickup truck, even his prized collection of vintage pocket watches. Every asset, down to the last heirloom, was left to Chloe, his younger sister. Thane's name surfaced only in a single, fleeting sentence. "We cherish both our children." Cherish. The word burned, empty as a discarded IOU. A knot formed in his chest, hot and tight. Chloe, who drifted through freelance jobs and leaned on their parents for rent, who only called Thane when her car died or her credit card maxed out. He'd worked double shifts to cover the mortgage, crawled under the house to mend frozen pipes, driven through blizzards to pick up Linda's heart medication. Yet here, in stark black ink, his efforts were erased, his place in the family reduced to a footnote. The kitchen door swung open, and Linda stepped into the dining room, wiping her hands on a checkered towel. "Did you find the bill?" she asked, her voice light, oblivious. Thane rose, the will gripped tightly, his knuckles whitening. "Mom, what is this?" His words were low, each syllable carrying a weight that seemed to still the room. Linda's eyes darted to the envelope and her expression faltered, a shadow of guilt flickering across her face. "Oh, Thane, that's just some paperwork. You weren't meant to see it." "Weren't meant to see that you and Dad cut me out of everything?" he said, his voice controlled but edged with a rawness he couldn't hide. "The house I've kept from the bank, the bills I've paid, the repairs I've done, none of it counts?" Gerald's heavy steps echoed from the hallway, his flannel shirt creased from a midday nap. He set his coffee mug down with a weary sigh, as if Thane's words were a tiresome complaint. "Don't make a mountain out of this, son. You're doing all right. Chloe's the one who needs the help." Thane's laugh cut through the silence, sharp and hollow. "Help? She's had a free ride her whole life, yours and mine. I've paid your mortgage for 3 years, Dad. I've kept this house from falling apart. And you're saying she's the one who needs it?" Linda moved closer, her hand outstretched, but Thane stepped back, the will still in his hand. "We just wanted her to feel safe," she said, her voice soft, almost pleading. "You've always been the strong one, Thane." "Strong?" His eyes locked onto hers, unyielding. "You mean convenient. And now that I've done my part, I'm disposable?" The room grew heavy, the only sound the faint tick of the wall clock. Gerald stared at his mug, Linda at the floor. Neither spoke. Thane placed the will on the table, its pages crumpled from his grip, and headed for the door. "Thanks for showing me my worth," he said, his voice cold, resolute. Outside, the autumn wind stung his face. The driveway stretched ahead, the house standing behind him like a testament to his misplaced faith. No one followed, no one called out. For the first time, Thane felt neither rage nor grief, just a clear, piercing emptiness. He climbed into his truck, the engine rumbling to life, and drove off, the house he'd saved fading in the mirror. What defines a family's promises? Share your thoughts below. Thane Whitaker once saw family as an anchor, grounding him through life's storms, until he learned anchors could be cut loose when they were no longer needed. 2 weeks after discovering his parents' will, the silence from the house on Cedar Lane was louder than any argument. Thane had walked away expecting some gesture, a call, a text, even an apology scrawled on a napkin. Instead, his phone stayed dark, as if his years of sacrifice had been erased as easily as his name from their legacy. In his small Boise apartment, Thane sat at his kitchen counter, the morning sun slanting through a cracked blind. The space was sparse, a second-hand couch, a coffee table cluttered with engineering manuals, a single wood-carving tool he'd bought on impulse. He'd always put his parents' needs first, their mortgage swallowing funds he might have used for a better place, a vacation, or even a hobby. Now the quiet felt both liberating and hollow, a reminder of the family who hadn't reached out. His phone buzzed, shattering the stillness. A text from Gerald. "Thane, mortgage is due. Can you send $3,200 by Monday?" No greeting, no mention of the will, just a demand, cold as a bank notice. Thane stared at the screen, a bitter laugh escaping him. 9 years of payments, repairs, and late-night drives to fix their heat, and this was his reward. A bill, like he was their personal ATM. He typed back, fingers steady. "Chloe's got it covered. It's her house now." He hit send and set the phone face down, the act feeling like a line drawn in the sand. Minutes later, another buzz. Linda this time. "Thane, don't do this. We need to talk." The words carried her familiar pleading tone, the one that had always pulled him back to fix their messes. Not today. Thane stood, pacing the linoleum floor. He thought of Chloe, who hadn't called since the confrontation, who hadn't acknowledged the will that named her the sole heir. She'd always been the one who stumbled, quitting jobs, racking up debt, leaning on their parents' wallet. Yet they'd chosen her, as if Thane's reliability made him invisible. The unfairness burned, but beneath it was something sharper: clarity. He wasn't their safety net anymore. He opened his laptop and logged into the bank account he'd shared with his parents for emergencies. His name was tied to years of transactions, mortgage payments, utility bills, even Chloe's car repairs. With a few clicks, he removed himself, severing the financial tether. Next, he canceled the auto payments for their electricity and internet, ones he'd set up to keep their house running. Each action felt like shedding a weight he'd carried too long. His phone lit up again. "Chloe, finally." "You're being ridiculous. Mom and Dad didn't mean it like that. I'm not like you. I need help." The message dripped with her usual defensiveness, as if Thane's strength was a crime. He typed back, slow and deliberate. "Then step up and earn what they gave you. Start with the mortgage." He didn't wait for a reply. Outside, the Boise air was crisp, the streets lined with trees shedding their last autumn leaves. Thane walked to a nearby hardware store, the kind where sawdust clung to the air. He bought a set of wood-carving chisels, their handles smooth and heavy in his hands. He'd always wanted to carve, to create something that was his alone. But the house on Cedar Lane had consumed his time and money. Now, he had both. Back home, he set the chisels on his table, their gleam a small rebellion against years of self-denial. He didn't need his parents' approval or Chloe's gratitude. He needed to rebuild himself piece by piece like the house he'd once saved. The phone stayed silent for the rest of the day, and for the first time, Thane didn't check it. The quiet wasn't lonely. It was his. What does it take to break a family's patterns? Share your thoughts below. 3 weeks had passed since Thane Whitaker severed the financial lifelines tethering him to his parents' house on Cedar Lane, and the silence from his family had hardened into something permanent. He'd expected guilt to creep in, or at least a pang of regret, but instead he felt a strange lightness, like a man who'd set down a burden he hadn't realized was crushing him. His Boise apartment, once a functional pit stop, was starting to feel like a home, chisels lined up on his coffee table, wood shavings curling on the floor from his first clumsy attempts at carving. Yet the quiet was about to break, and not in the way he'd hoped. Thane was sanding a rough cedar block, the scent of fresh-cut wood filling the air, when his phone vibrated against the counter. A transfer request from Linda, $3,200 labeled mortgage urgent. No message, just a digital demand, as impersonal as a parking ticket. His jaw tightened. He'd already told them Chloe was their heir, their choice. He swiped to decline, the action swift and final. Seconds later, the phone rang, Linda's name flashing. He let it ring, the sound grating against the soft scrape of sandpaper. A voicemail followed. "Thane, it's Mom." Her voice trembled through the speaker, a mix of desperation and reproach. "The bank's calling daily. Chloe can't figure out the payments. Please, just help us this once." The words hung in the air, familiar bait to reel him back into their chaos. He deleted the message, his resolve unshaken but his chest heavy with the ghost of old loyalties. By noon, another text arrived, this time from Chloe. "You're letting us lose the house. The power's flickering and I don't know what to do. Why are you doing this?" Thane read it twice, her panic almost palpable, but her words lacked accountability. She hadn't mentioned the will, hadn't apologized, just expected him to swoop in as always. He typed back, "You wanted the house. Now keep it standing." He hit send and turned off his phone, the silence that followed a small victory. Outside, Boise's autumn streets were ablaze with crimson and gold, but Thane's mind was on the house he'd left behind. He walked to a local coffee shop, the kind with mismatched chairs and baristas who knew his order. Black, no sugar. Settling into a corner booth, he opened his sketchbook, doodling designs for a carving project, a hawk, wings spread, free. For years, he'd poured his energy into his parents' home, leaving no room for his own dreams. Now, each sketch felt like a step toward something unbroken. His thoughts were interrupted by a call from Marjorie, the neighbor who'd lived next to his parents for decades. Her voice was gentle but urgent. "Thane, I hate to bother you, but your mom's been asking around about selling the house. The bank sent a foreclosure notice. Chloe's back living there, but she's overwhelmed, keeps calling repairmen for things you used to fix." Thane thanked her, his tone polite but distant. He didn't feel smug or vindicated, just detached, like a stranger hearing about someone else's misfortune. That evening, Thane sat at his table, carving a shallow curve into the cedar block. The chisel moved with purpose, each cut a defiance of the role he'd played for too long. He thought of the house, its creaking floors, the furnace he'd patched, the roof he'd climbed in the rain. It wasn't just a building. It was a symbol of his devotion, now crumbling under the weight of his family's choices. He didn't want it to fall, but he couldn't keep propping it up, not when they'd built their future on Chloe's name alone. A knock at his door startled him. He opened it to find Chloe, her coat rumpled, eyes red-rimmed, clutching a folder of bank papers. "5 minutes, Thane," she said, her voice shaky. "I don't know how to read these terms. The bank's threatening to take everything." Her desperation was raw, but Thane's expression stayed hard. "What about the inheritance?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed. "The house, the savings, yours now, right?" Chloe looked away, her fingers tightening on the folder. "It's tied up in some trust. I can't access it without penalties. I didn't think it'd get this bad." Her voice cracked, but Thane saw no trace of remorse, only fear of consequences. "You signed for it all," he said, his tone even but unyielding. "You didn't think because you never had to. I'm not your fallback anymore." He stepped back, closing the door before she could respond. Her muffled plea faded as he returned to his carving, the chisel's steady rhythm drowning out the past. The house on Cedar Lane was cracking, and Thane was no longer its foundation. He didn't know what came next for his family, but for the first time, he wasn't carrying their weight. The hawk in his sketchbook took shape, its wings a promise of flight. How far would you go to protect your own peace? Share your thoughts below. The house on Cedar Lane was slipping into chaos, and Thane Whitaker felt the tremors even from his quiet corner of Boise. A month after he'd cut financial ties, his family's desperation had morphed into something uglier, a campaign to rewrite his absence as betrayal. Thane had carved out a fragile piece, his evenings spent shaping cedar into the form of a hawk, its wings emerging with each careful chisel stroke. But peace, he was learning, could be shattered by a single post. He was scrolling through his phone at a Boise diner, the clink of dishes and hum of conversation a comforting backdrop, when a notification caught his eye. A friend had tagged him in a Facebook post by Linda. Her words were a gut punch. "It breaks my heart when a son turns his back on family, leaving his aging parents to face ruin alone." The post included a photo of the ranch house, its faded siding framed by overgrown weeds, as if Thane's departure had caused the neglect. Over 100 shares, with comments piling up. How could he do this? Such a shame. Thane's grip tightened on his coffee mug, the warmth doing little to ease the chill spreading through him. He clicked through to Gerald's profile, finding another post. We raised Thane to value family, but when we needed him most, he walked away. The bank's at our door now. Chloe's contribution was the sharpest. Some people act loyal until it's inconvenient. Guess that's what strength looks like now. Her words dripped with mockery, painting Thane as a heartless deserter. The diner's noise faded, replaced by a rush of memories. Nights spent balancing his parents' budget, weekends patching their roof, years of sidelining his own dreams to keep their house standing. He'd given $65,000, countless hours, and pieces of himself he'd never get back. And now, they'd turned his sacrifice into a public spectacle, a narrative where he was the villain and Chloe the innocent heir. Thane's first instinct was to stay silent, to let their lies burn out like a bad fire. But silence had been his role for too long, swallowing resentment, fixing their messes, staying the dutiful son. He opened his laptop, the diner's Wi-Fi sluggish, but enough. He gathered screenshots, the will naming Chloe as sole beneficiary, bank statements showing his mortgage payments, texts from Linda and Gerald demanding money after the fallout. Each file was a brick in the wall he was about to build. His post was simple, deliberate. My family's sharing half a story. Here's the truth. He attached the evidence, his words measured but unflinching. For 9 years, I paid their mortgage, fixed their home, kept it from foreclosure. They chose to leave everything to my sister, who's never paid a bill. I didn't abandon them. They erased me first. He hit post, his heart pounding not with fear, but with a fierce clarity. The truth wasn't a weapon, it was a shield. Within hours, the response was electric. Friends commented first, "Thane, this is unreal. You did so much." Strangers followed, their words a mix of shock and support. No one deserves to be used like that. A former co-worker shared the post, adding, "I always knew Thane was the backbone of that family. This breaks my heart." By evening, the post had hundreds of shares, its reach dwarfing his family's accusations. Thane leaned back in the booth, the diner's fluorescent lights casting long shadows. He didn't feel triumphant, just unburdened, like a man who'd finally spoken a truth he'd carried too long. His phone buzzed, notifications from people he hadn't spoken to in years, offering encouragement, sharing their own stories of family unfairness. The outpouring wasn't just validation, it was a reminder that he wasn't alone. By the next morning, Linda's post was gone. Gerald had deactivated his account, and Chloe had changed her profile picture to a vague sunset, her go-to move when cornered. Thane didn't gloat. He didn't need their retreat to feel whole. He walked to a local art supply store, the crisp Boise air clearing his mind. He bought a block of walnut wood, its grain rich and complex, perfect for a new carving. The hawk was nearly done. Maybe next he'd carve a tree, rooted but reaching skyward. Back at his apartment, he set the wood on his table, its weight grounding him. The house on Cedar Lane was no longer his to save, but this small, tangible act of creation, was his. He didn't know if his family would double down or disappear, but for now, their silence was enough. He'd reclaimed his voice, and no post could take that away. What does it mean to stand up for your truth? Share your thoughts below. The fallout from Thane Whitaker's public stand had silenced his family's online attacks, but the house on Cedar Lane was still a festering wound, its cracks now threatening to swallow them whole. 5 weeks after Thane exposed their betrayal on Facebook, the Boise air had turned sharp with winter's approach, mirroring the cold resolve he'd honed. His apartment was alive with the scent of cedar and walnut, his wood-carving tools transforming raw blocks into intricate shapes, a hawk, a tree, a future he was building with his own hands. Yet the past wasn't done with him. Thane was sketching a new design, the soft scratch of pencil on paper a steady rhythm, when his phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. He ignored it, assuming it was another bank notice misdirected from his parents' mess. A voicemail followed, and curiosity nudged him to listen. It was Marjorie, the neighbor. "Thane, it's serious now. Your parents are packing boxes. The bank's set to foreclose next week. Chloe's there, but she's in over her head. I thought you should know." Her voice was kind, tinged with worry. But Thane set the phone down, his expression unreadable. The house he'd saved for 9 years was collapsing, and he felt no urge to rescue it. That afternoon, he walked through Boise's downtown, the streets glittering with early holiday lights. He passed a craft store and bought a small carving knife, its blade sharp enough for delicate work. Each purchase, each moment he claimed for himself, felt like a brick laid in a new foundation, one that didn't rely on his family's approval. But as he turned onto his street, he froze. His parents' pickup truck, Gerald's pride with its polished chrome, was parked outside his apartment. Linda, Gerald, and Chloe stood by the entrance, their faces a mix of exhaustion and defiance. Thane approached, his steps measured, the carving knife's weight in his pocket grounding him. Linda spoke first, her voice trembling but edged with accusation. "Thane, we're losing everything. The bank's coming Monday. You can't just stand by and let this happen." Her eyes, red from crying, searched his face for the son who'd always fixed their problems. Gerald stepped forward, his flannel jacket worn thin. "We made a mistake with the will," he said, his voice low, almost grudging. "But this is your mother's home. If it's gone, she won't survive it." His words carried a plea, but also an expectation, as if Thane's duty was unchanging. Thane's gaze shifted to Chloe, who clutched her coat, avoiding his eyes. "Why'd you write me out?" he asked, his voice calm but piercing. "I gave you $65,000, years of my life, and you decided I wasn't worth a line in that will." Linda's lips quivered. "We thought you'd be fine. You're so capable. Chloe needed us more." Her excuse was flimsy, a cracked shield against the truth. "Capable?" Thane's tone hardened, each word deliberate. "You mean expendable. I rebuilt your house, paid your debts, and you chose her, the one who's never lifted a finger. And now you're here, expecting me to save you again?" Chloe finally spoke, her voice small but laced with resentment. "I didn't ask for this, Thane. I thought it'd be easier. I'm trying, but it's too much." Her admission was raw, but it lacked the weight of accountability. "Trying?" Thane's eyes locked onto hers. "You took everything without a thought. You don't get to play victim now." He turned to his parents. "I warned you. I waited for you to see me. You didn't. This is the consequence." Linda's tears fell, but Thane felt no pull to comfort her. Gerald's shoulders slumped, his silence louder than any argument. Chloe pressed her lips together, her defiance crumbling into something fragile. Thane stepped past them, unlocking his door. "Find another way," he said, his voice steady. "I'm not your lifeline anymore." He shut the door, the click echoing in the quiet hallway. Inside, he leaned against the wall, his breath uneven. The confrontation hadn't brought catharsis, only a stark realization. Family wasn't a guarantee of love, but a choice to value each other. They'd chosen Chloe, and he'd chosen himself. The next day, Thane drove to a community center where he'd started teaching wood carving to teens. The room buzzed with laughter and the clatter of tools, kids shaping rough blocks into birds and stars. Watching them, Thane felt a warmth he hadn't known in years, a sense of purpose untied to obligation. He'd signed up for an advanced carving workshop, his savings growing now that they weren't funneled to Cedar Lane. He even booked a spring trip to Alaska, dreaming of its vast forests and untamed skies. His phone stayed quiet, no texts or calls from his family. Marjorie sent a brief message. "They're meeting with a realtor. Chloe's handling it, but it's not looking good." Thane read it, then set his phone aside, picking up his chisel. The hawk was nearly complete, its wings sharp and proud. He didn't need the house or their approval to soar. The confrontation had drawn a line, one his family couldn't cross. Thane didn't know if they'd lose the house or find a way, but he knew he was done carrying their choices. His life was his own now, and he was ready to carve it into something enduring. What would you do when family crosses the line? Share your thoughts below. The house on Cedar Lane had defined Thane Whitaker's life for nearly a decade, its walls heavy with his loyalty, until he shattered its hold to claim his own. 6 weeks after rejecting his family's final plea, Boise's winter wrapped the city in frost, mirroring the clarity Thane had forged. His apartment glowed with the warmth of creation, wood shavings scattered around a finished hawk carving, its wings a testament to his freedom. The story of Cedar Lane was nearing its end, and Thane was ready to write its final page. Thane was shaping a walnut block in his new workshop, the space small but his own, when a text from Marjorie, the neighbor, lit his phone. "House sold, $410,000 below value. Your parents are in a rental now. Chloe's struggling." The words landed lightly like snow that wouldn't stick. The house he'd saved with $65,000 in years of labor was gone, lost to his family's choices. He felt no guilt, only a quiet unmooring, as if a tether had snapped. He thanked Marjorie and turned back to his carving, the chisel's rhythm steady. Teaching wood carving at the community center had become his anchor, the teens' laughter and rough-hewn projects a new kind of family. His own work, a hawk, a tree, was earning praise, with a Boise gallery set to showcase his pieces in spring. Thane had leased this workshop with savings once drained by Cedar Lane, each dollar now a step toward his dreams. That night, an email from Linda arrived. "I'm sorry." Her words were raw. "We broke you, Thane. We chose Chloe, thinking you'd always be fine. The house is gone. I don't expect forgiveness, but we love you." A photo showed the empty ranch house, its porch bare. Thane read it, the ache faint but real. The apology was their first nod to his worth, but it couldn't rebuild what they'd burned. He saved the email unanswered, a relic of a past he'd outgrown. Chloe's voicemail came next, her voice brittle. "The house money went to debts. I'm getting a job, starting over." "You were right. I didn't earn it. I'm sorry." Thane listened, his hand still on the wood. Her regret was a crack in her entitlement, but it didn't draw him back. She was learning. He was living. At the gallery, Thane delivered his carvings, the curator, Ellen, admiring the hawk's fierce grace. "This is raw, real," she said. "People will feel it." Thane nodded, her words a quiet affirmation. His blog, Carving a Path, was growing, its posts about breaking free from family burdens resonating with strangers. "Your story helped me say no. I'm finding my way too." Each comment wove a new community, one that saw him. Winter deepened, and Thane joined a hiking group, their treks through Boise's snowy foothills a reminder of life's vastness. He booked a spring trip to Alaska, its forests a canvas for new designs. A letter from Gerald arrived, brief but heavy. "I failed you, son. We're in a rental, getting by. I'm proud of you." Thane tucked it away with Linda's email, its words too late to mend, but enough to close a door. The gallery exhibit opened, Thane's carvings glowing under soft lights. Visitors bought pieces, asked about his classes, shared their own stories of breaking free. A local paper called him Boise's Artist of Resilience, a title that fit like his chisels. Chloe texted once more. "Saw your exhibit. You're incredible. I'm sorry." Thane didn't reply. His story had moved beyond hers. His parents faded into silence, their rental a distant echo. The house on Cedar Lane was a shadow, its loss their burden. Thane stood in his workshop, finishing a mountain carving, jagged, enduring. His classes thrived, his blog connected thousands, his Alaska trip loomed like a promise. Family wasn't blood, it was respect, presence, choice. Thane had found his on the trails, in the classroom, in the woods' grain. He set the mountain carving beside the hawk, its peaks catching the light. Thane wasn't escaping his past. He was rising above it, his life a testament to what he'd carved alone. What does it mean to build your own family? Share your thoughts below. Before we close Thane's story, I want to share a reflection from his perspective, speaking directly to you. "I spent years believing family was about sacrifice, giving everything to those I loved, even when it left me empty. But I learned family isn't just blood, it's the people who see your worth, who stand by you without taking." Walking away from that house wasn't easy, but it taught me to build a life on my terms, to carve my own path with every chisel stroke. To anyone feeling unseen, know this: your value isn't tied to what you give others. You have the strength to rise, to create something true. Now let's talk. What does family mean to you? Have you ever had to redefine it? Drop a comment with your thoughts, your story, or even where you're watching from. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button to join us for more journeys that hit the heart. If it didn't, tell me why. I'm all ears. Let's keep the conversation going.